The Christmas season isn't over yet, not for worshipers of the Russian Orthodox faith. A week-long celebration is underway. The Byzantine beauty of St. Tikhon, a parish tucked into the Anchorage hillside. Take a tour of a church that transcends time.
The purpose of frescoes, the purpose of iconography, is to open up to a person this spiritual world.
Coming up on Frontiers, a look behind the history behind this unique mix of European and Alaska Native traditions.
Sponsorship for Frontiers with Rhonda McBride is provided by Kupik Corporation and Spinard Builders Supply. Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to our program. This week we explore the frontiers of faith, the Russian Orthodox Church and its rich traditions, which are celebrated this month during what's often called Russian Christmas. It's a week of festivities that began on January 7th, the birth date of Christ according to the Julian calendar, and we'll have more about that later in our program. But first, a trip to the Anchorage hillside for the sights and sounds of a Russian Orthodox parish called St. Tikhon. The shape of the Russian Orthodox dome symbolizes the flame of faith, lit from within. Worshippers stand through most of the service, which can last for hours. So there's time to breathe in the incense. Time for thoughts to drift, and through the Byzantine beauty of the art, travel back to a time when few could read words, a time when the pictures did the work of telling the story.
The bottom line is you have to fit in the story, right?
Here at St. Tikhon, everyone stands in the center of the story, surrounded by frescoes, fashioned to give rise to life's most burning questions.
Who am I? Why am I here? I know what my wife wants from me. I know what my kids want from me. But here, I'm asking myself this question constantly: what does God want from me?
Father Daniel Andreyuk says,
very special.
This feast for the eyes is meant to feed the soul.
It's my baby. I watched these. They were done under my supervision. And if you try to do something to them, I will hurt you. No.
Father Daniel likes to joke. But if there's one thing he's serious about, it's his faith. Why do you think the art is so important in trying to connect with spirituality?
Because we're very visual. We have to see, we have to smell, we have to touch. I hope that the art and the music helps you on your spiritual journey. And we all come from different backgrounds. It's truly a melting pot of different cultures and different traditions. But Christ is one.
Greek artists painted the frescoes. The Russians made the icons. Combined, they evoke the mysticism of early Christianity.
Whether you live 1,000 years ago or you live today, the problems are the same. They're just wrapped in a different candy wrapper.
Although the murals tell the story of Christ, Father Daniel says that they also are reminders that faith is always tested, as in the virgin birth.
You see Mary in a cave, sitting and trying to cuddle her baby, Jesus. You can see Joseph That's always an interesting figure.
He looks worried.
And he's thinking like in his head, like, I have no clue what just happened. It's like, can somebody explain to me what just happened? There are archangels singing. There are the 3 wise men that are bringing gifts. Notice, they're bringing gifts to him. Okay, that's also important for today's day and age.
Orthodox worshipers, Father Daniel says, are also influenced by the commercialism of Christmas.
Unfortunately, we have taken Christ out of Christmas. We have.
But Father Daniel says the birth of Christ is not the most important fresco.
But that right there has deep meaning, deep theology.
The Eastern Wall, where you'll find the altar in all Russian Orthodox churches.
And the East Wall, it has really deep theology, deep meaning.
The murals here show the arrival of Jesus into Jerusalem, his death, and his resurrection.
This is the last panel. This is his ascension.
The panels about the ascension and the birth of Christ connect, a sign the story has come full circle. Father Daniel says so little is sacred today, a fact of modern life.
Because as soon as you open this door and you leave this property, where are you going to get this? You're going to get this at Costco?
St. Tikhon, rustic on the outside, but inside, a window into a rich and beautiful world.
This piece of property, this building, it belongs to God. This space is sacred.
St. Tikhon is the only Russian Orthodox church in Alaska with frescoes. And just ahead, Following the Star. A tradition celebrated in communities across our state. The story of how starring was introduced in Alaska.
So a lot of this is actually very traditional Alaskan that was here long before Christianity.
Our guest this week, Father Michael Alexa, says there's nothing Russian about Russian Christmas, that worshipers from Moscow to St. Petersburg have never experienced customs like those in Alaska. But first, here are some greetings from St. Alexis Chapel in Anchorage.
Wise men are hearing Christ, they are grieving.
Hi, I'm George Pletnikoff. I'm from St. George Island and St. Paul. Wish everybody at home a joyous nativity.
We have a story of 27 families that put 18 months of their lives into building a village, a home for themselves and their future. Our Inupiaq culture goes back thousands of years, carried by a strong sense of community. Our relationship with our natural surroundings is at the heart of our culture. By investing in future generations through development that is balanced with the love of our land, the Kupi Corporation brings together traditions of the past with visions of the future.
At Spinard Builder Supply, we know it takes a lot of ingredients to get it just right. That's why we have design centers in every store to personalize the most important rooms in your home. We'll help you select cabinets, faucets, and appliances that fit your style. So all you have to worry about is how much oregano goes in Mom's pasta sauce. Spinard Builder Supply. Building for life.
Now offering financing with no payments or interest for 12 months. Visit our design experts today at your local Spinard Builder Supply.
It's not like people are going to come up to you and tell you they're thinking about taking their life. They're feeling alone, they're feeling hopeless, they're feeling lost, unloved.
Those who are suicidal feel alone. Let them know they're not. Ask how they're doing. Check in every day.
I wish I would have called them one more time.
You could save a life. No experience necessary. For support, go to StopSuicideAlaska.org.
We're in Ruby, and it was on the thermometer 22 below. So I go inside. And I say, wow, it's 22 below. And she says, well, that thermometer's off by 6 degrees, so it's about 28. Guy sitting next to her chimes in. He says, well, that's not quite accurate as well, too. He says, you got to take another 7 degrees because you're up here. And so it's really about 35 below. And then someone else comes in and says, yeah, but then when you get the wind coming in, it's another 10 degrees. So he said, so really, a couple hundred yards away, you could be at 45 below. Mushers come in and they say, gee, my thermometer bottomed out at 65 below. So we went from 22 below to 65 below, like that.
Every January 7th, one Russian Orthodox Christmas tradition burns brightly at the Alaska Native Medical Center, the tradition of following the star. The star takes its inspiration from the one the three wise men followed to Bethlehem. Today, carolers follow the star. In communities across our state, it travels house to house, lighting up the cold and darkness of winter and bringing people together to celebrate.
My favorite part about Russian Christmas is just being with my family and slaving at different houses and making people happy.
In rural communities, the celebration is sometimes called Slavy or Slavic, probably slang for the Russian word slava, which means glory. The starring and singing are often followed by feasting, gifts, and candy. But each community has its own spin on this celebration, different carols, different languages, and different favorite foods. And joining us now to give us a fuller appreciation of some of these very old traditions, Father Michael Alexa. Now, one of the things I would like to do is start off with one of the questions from our viewers, Laura Hiltz of Seldovia, because I think this will be a good introduction. She says, please give us a basic introduction to the different types of orthodoxy that exist so folks would have a fundamental understanding. Because I think a lot of people get confused. What is Orthodox?
Well, to be Orthodox means to be loyal to the teachings and traditions and beliefs of the Church during the first millennium A.D. People today probably don't realize that there was simply one church for 1,000 years. And that church was enculturated in places like Ethiopia, Egypt, and Cyprus at the time of the apostles. But the Ethiopians were worshiping in Ge'ez, the Egyptians in Coptic, in the ancient language of Egypt, of course the Greeks in Greek, and later on as the gospel spread and the church proliferated, Armenia in Armenia, and Georgia in Georgia, and Romanian in Romanian, and eventually after 1,000 years, Slavonic among the Slavic peoples of Eastern Europe. So there are actually 15 independent self-governing Orthodox communities in the world, but we share exactly the same faith, traditions, creed, and worship services. Most of them are translated from the original Greek, but each in their own language throughout the world.
So where did things split and change?
About the year 1000, the Latin-speaking Christians in the West, united under the Pope of Rome, believed that they were the center of Christianity and that the Pope of Rome should decide all the important doctrinal questions from then on. The Eastern churches disagreed and there was a split, and it's never been healed.
So, you know, people call it shorthand Russian Christmas, but it's also said that it's really not very Russian. Can you explain that?
That's true. The custom of starring is a phenomenon in the Carpathian Mountains, which includes today Poland, Slovakia, Romania, and Ukraine. And in all those countries, they follow a star from house to house caroling. But their stars are on a fixed pole, like a processional cross. And what's unique about our Alaskan stars is that they spin, they twirl. And we discovered only about 20 years ago that there's one county in Ukraine, in the Ternopilskaya Oblast, where they spin their stars. So it seems that's where our spinning star originated. But how it got 12 time zones away from us, from Western Ukraine all the way to Alaska, that's somehow a mystery lost in the mists of time.
That is strange that we would get the one place.
The one place. And of course, it's become a phenomenon throughout Alaska. There are no stars that don't spin in Alaska, so all our stars spin, but even in Ukraine, the spinning of the star is only known in one small region.
So let's talk about some of the traditions that you've observed, because you've served all over the state. And,
yes, I have.
There's quite a mixture of Christmas traditions.
Oh, definitely. In the Nushagak, for example, we have retained the ancient Yupik tradition of midwinter inter-village visitations. Apparently in the past, for thousands of years, people in the summer stored up extra food to have a celebration sometime in December, January, somewhere in there, and they invited other villages to come and join their feasts. This is still what Nushagak and Iliamna people do. They take their star, not just through their village, but from village to village throughout the entire region, and whole villages visit each other. On the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, a different part of that tradition has been preserved. The ancient feasts were about showing respect for the animals who had perished, who had been killed and harvested in the previous year, but also respect for the ancestors and relatives who had died during the previous year. So during the feasting, gifts were given in memory of those ancestors, those relatives who had died, and this has been preserved in the Kuskokwim Yukon starring tradition, where people come, sit at the table, eat a full banquet, and then are given gifts in memory of the departed loved ones who passed away during the previous 12 months.
Can you talk a little bit about the gifting? Because it's very different than the December 25th type of gifting.
Yes, exactly. It's not a gift exchange. The host gives the gifts to all those who have come to the house to honor the feast, to celebrate the feast, and to also honor the ancestors who have died. So it's a one-way gift giving. It's the host who distributes the gifts to everyone who came. And these gifts are often associated with the person who passed away. For example, when my mother-in-law died some years ago, we gave everyone the glass plates and the utensils with which they ate. They took all those home. And then we gave away also, because she was a professional knitter, skeins of yarn and knitting needles for anyone who could use that yarn and those needles to make new things in memory of course, my mother-in-law.
And of course, she's Yupik.
Yes,
from
Yupik.
From Queeth, like your wife Zena is from there. To me, this gifting is so special because, you'll wind up with things like tea towels and pocket knives and
mittens and socks.
Humble.
Yes, humble gifts. But then whenever you use them, you think of the person who gave them to you, and you also think of the person in whose memory they were given. It's very much like the Klinka tradition at the Kuik, the potlatch. But the Kuik has remained a distinct tradition in Southeast Alaska, where among the Yupik people it has been combined with Slavic.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the caroling, because that's a big part of it, and people learn carols in all kinds of different languages.
Yes, they do. We sing the church hymns, which have been translated into Yupik, into Tlingit, into Alutiiq, into Unangan. We sing those in each of the individual languages, and also Slavonic, the original language from which they were translated from Russia. And then we sing other hymns that are uniquely Carpathian. These are the ones that a Russian wouldn't recognize at all. They've never been sung probably in Moscow or St. Petersburg or even Irkutsk. They're the Ukrainian Carpathian songs that are folk carols indigenous to that one region of the Carpathian Mountains. How they came to Alaska, I'm not sure, but our people have memorized them and retained the joy of singing them now for several hundred years.
Why do you think that is, that people absorbed this other language and then kept it?
Well, to some extent, it may be due to the fact that the so-called Russians who came to Alaska in the 17 and 1800s were for the most part themselves native Siberian people who had probably intermarried, my hunch is, with some Ukrainian exiles in Siberia, and they brought these customs. We know that when the church came in 1794, the official missionaries were astounded to find the entire Aleutian chain already baptized and with chapels in every village. And this was brought by the Siberian native people who had already intermarried with the Alaska native people. So this is a kind of synthesis of all these cultures coming together, unique to Alaska.
And so how does that fit into Orthodoxy, that you have this melting pot, literally?
Yeah. Well, it hasn't really melted. It's more like a salad bowl where everybody has retained their own unique flavor and identity, but it's all absorbed, and the singing and the hymns are shared throughout the Orthodox world to some extent, and then these folk carols are uniquely Alaskan.
Now, I have one more question to ask you from a viewer, and this one comes from Richard Russell in Palmer. I knew Dick Russell in Bethel, but here's his question. He says, ask him about his experiences when he first came to Alaska. He has some amazing and funny stories. Because you came from Pennsylvania?
I came from Pennsylvania. I was a graduate student at St. Vladimir Seminary in New York, and I, by the way, always wanted to be an Indian. When people asked me when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, Michael, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be Apache, Comanche, Arapaho. My mother, who was Pennsylvania Dutch, and my father, Ukrainian, did their best to convince me that that really wasn't in the cards. But now I've spent 40 years in Alaska. I've learned to speak some Yupik, I would say. I've been adopted by the Tlingit people, and I lived among Aleuts and Athabascan folks for so long that AFN about 5 years ago, made me the Alaskan of the Year, and Willie Hensley, who's a Nupiaq, gave me this beautiful dentalia necklace, put it around my neck, and said, now I guess we're going to have to call you Chief Father Michael. So I called my mother and said, I finally made it. I've been adopted. I got my childhood dream to become a Native American.
Now, your wife is from Kwethluk,
Yes.
and I know you spent some time there. What did you learn from living in Kwethluk?
Well, I've learned so much from living among the Yupik people. I remember my first hunting experience with now Daniel Olek, who's the chief of police there, and Father Philip Alexi, who lives in New Napachuk now. They took me hunting, and we came home one afternoon with about a dozen muskrats. And the lady of the house, who was my Yupik teacher, Annabelle Olek, she was delighted. She skinned and gutted these muskrats. And then she set the table with washcloths as well as spoons. Now, I knew we were having soup, but the washcloths mystified me. I was soon to find out that those were for bukoking, a word I had not yet learned. The soup was served with broth and one muskrat in the bowl. And I didn't know how to eat this. The others at the table were there to show me. We went right into the bowl and ate with our fingers, and when it got messy, that's what the wet washcloths were for. At the end of the meal, my teacher, Annabelle, came to me and said, Dakuten ka, you're done, aren't you? And I thought I was, so I said, yes, But she didn't look happy about my answer. I looked around, and everybody else was busy separating every bone from every other bone, and with a lot of extra effort and noise, that's the Yupik word bukoking, removing the meat from every little bone so that none of it would be wasted. So I did my best to imitate that. She returned and said, Nutan ka dakuden, now you're done, aren't you? Not so confident the second time, I answered,
Yes.
And she said, And I had learned the primary lesson of Yupik good manners etiquette, waste nothing. These animals died, sacrificed themselves to feed you. Now you don't throw it away. You consume everything as a sign of gratitude and respect, even for the animals who have died to keep you alive.
That's a beautiful story. Well, we're going to continue our conversation on the web. Father Michael Alexa, thanks here for being with us. And up next, the story behind one particular star, refurbishing a treasure from a lost village, and more holiday greetings.
My name is Betty Bismarck, and I'm from Tyonek, Alaska. I want to wish the people of Tyonek a Merry Christmas, and I wanted to say, Christ is born, glorify Him.
I just want cremation.
No hidden costs, no add-ons.
Cremation is much more affordable.
Dignified, ecological.
I just want something basic. The simpler, the better.
Cremation sure makes a lot of sense. The Cremation Society of Alaska is now serving families in Anchorage and in the Valley, and we are always on the web at alaskacremation.com. Call us today at 277-2777 or in the Valley 373-8627.
We taught him how to hit a baseball, how to hit a receiver, the strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
Choose AK Child and Family when you pick, click, give to support a network of people and programs serving children and families battling behavioral health challenges. AK Child and Family offers the structure, care, and expertise to help at-risk youth build strong, positive, healthy lives. Amazing transformations are happening at AK Child and Family. Help us make an impact. Pick, click, give.
All my life I've been in the outdoors. I remember being a kid when I was 12 years old, studying water temperatures off New Zealand to see if that was going to turn into a tropical storm, which will turn into a hurricane, and what way is the jet stream going to push it out in the Pacific? Does that mean Southern California is going to get monster waves? I was a windsurfer, and I had to study the weather when I was in my early 20s doing my windsurfing. And I realized I've been practicing this all my life, and finally I got smart. and I realized this is what you'll do.
The Alaska Supreme Court has weighed in on the long-standing Kenai fish wars. In December, the court ruled against an initiative that would let voters decide whether to ban set net fishing on the Kenai Peninsula. Andrew Jensen from the Alaska Journal of Commerce will join us for analysis. In this Frontiers follow-up, we'll also look back at both sides in the Kenai fish wars. Well, many of you have sent in photos of Slavic or Slavi celebrations, and this one came to us of the star from George Pletnikoff in Unalaska. And this is the Kipnik Slavic Choir, thanks to Larinell Johnston for this photo. And a celebration in Bethel. We want to thank Trim Nick for sending this in. And we have a photo gallery online. If you would like to send in your pictures, we'll add them to our website. Well, everyone loves a mystery, and this one involves a star from Kashiga, one of the lost villages of the Aleutians, where people were evacuated during World War II and never returned.
The star is blessed with the sprinkling of this holy water in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
The star was blessed this week because it had recently been refurbished, and for many years, though, it sat in a church attic in Nikolsky, and then eventually was taken to Unalaska. Its new home is Anchorage. The points of the star are made of glass. Each pane is hand-painted with an Alaska flower, the wild rose, the dog flower, forget-me-nots, and even blueberries, and at the center, the manger scene.
Everything about it is love. All the work that goes into it, everything that comes out of it from people that see it and sing with it, it's love.
The bells are Terenti Dushkin's own touch. He says the star gives him a feeling of pride when he sees how people react to it. So how old is this star? At least 80 years old. The frame could be even older. It weighs about 30 pounds. Oof. Well, that is the beauty of the starring tradition. So many variations on a theme. But this one is truly a great northern star. We want to thank you for joining us as we explored one of Alaska's frontiers of faith.